Well begun is half done. This golden saying also applies to the game of chess. A good opening in a chess game is very important. So what exactly is an opening? See, basically there are three phases in a game of chess: the opening, the middle game, and the end game. Opening is the stage where you bring out your pieces and set them up in attacking positions. The opening is generally completed when both your rooks connect to each other. A big mistake that amateur players make is that they try to memorize the opening moves. That is not the right way to go about it. Rather than memorizing, what we need to focus on is the basic idea and principles behind a good solid opening. So what is the basic idea in an opening? It's very simple. You need to bring out all your pieces into play before launching an attack and prevent your opponent from doing the same. In order to devise a good opening strategy, you need to keep in mind some very important principles and guidelines. In this video, I will tell you exactly what all moves you need to focus on in order to develop a good solid foundation to launch into your opponent. These are the absolute essential tips you need to know before starting off your chess journey. So what are we waiting for? Let's get started. Principle number 1. Develop your pieces. This is the most important rule and the foundation of your chess opening strategy. Like I mentioned earlier, the idea is to use your entire army. Therefore, piece development is very important. You need to open up your game and move your pieces to active squares from where they can control the maximum number of squares. It is advisable to develop your minor pieces first, that is your knights and your bishops, because they are generally easier to figure out the active square for these pieces early on in the game. Principle number 2. Occupy the center. So why is the center so important? It's simply because a piece in the center controls more squares than it could cover by sitting in the corner. Let's take the knight for example. This knight in the center is controlling 8 squares and it has 8 possible moves. Whereas this knight sitting in the corner is controlling only 2 squares and it has only 2 possible moves. This same principle can be applied to other pieces also. The opening is therefore always going to be a fight for the center. Moving on to principle number 3. This is an extension of principle number 2. You need to exert pressure on the center. You must keep in mind that just like you, your opponent is also trying to occupy the center, so you need to threaten his pieces so that he is forced to move away from the center. Let's take these opening moves for example. This is a very common opening by black and white. Here is what white is trying to do. He is trying to threaten the black knight on c6, which is giving support to the black pawn on e5. So indirectly, white is exerting pressure on the black pawn sitting on the central square e5. So this is how you exert pressure on the center. Principle number 4. Never move a piece twice in the beginning, because by doing this, you will only lose out on time. Your goal is to position your pieces in the first move itself on squares from where they are free to move up. The white knights, for example, generally occupy the c3 and f3 squares. The white bishops are generally positioned between the second and fourth lines, depending on your board setup and the opening variation. So that's how you can set up your pieces. The next principle, principle number 5. Don't bring out the queen too early. I've seen this. There's always a temptation amongst amateur players to bring out their queen early. They try to play those glory moves and try to checkmate their opponent in some of the well-known types and ways like these. While this trick might work against inexperienced and new players, but against seasoned players this strategy will definitely backfire. Queen is a very important piece, hence it can be threatened easily by pawns and other minor pieces. A good player will make your queen run all around the park just like this. He will gradually keep on developing his pieces by challenging your queen and thus gain a very strong positional advantage. It is therefore advisable to bring out your queen only after developing your knights and bishops. The next principle, principle number 6, and it's all about castling. Castling is generally the last stage in an opening. The king is precious and it is vulnerable in the center. Therefore, it needs to be shielded. Also, the rooks need to be brought onto open files, which are generally in the center. Castling therefore has a double advantage. Your king is tucked aside into safety behind the pawns, and your rooks are connected and are now ready to attack. Keep in mind that if your king or rook move, you can't castle. So therefore you need to try and castle as soon as possible. So these are the general guidelines that you must keep in mind before making your opening moves. Keep in mind that apart from following these tactics yourself, you also need to prevent your opponent from using these ideas. Ultimately, you will always have to think on your feet and modify your plans based on the moves made by your opponent. You can obviously deviate a little bit if the situation demands, but more or less this should be your opening strategy while facing highly rated players. It is important that you try out different opening variations keeping in mind these principles and see what works best for you. I'm sure these opening principles will take your game to the next level. So that's it guys. If you have any questions or ideas or any thoughts to share, feel free to post them in the comments section below. I read all the comments and reply wherever required, so don't hesitate to ask your chess queries. Don't forget to like this video if you found it useful. For more such chess videos, hit the subscribe button below. For some interesting chess tips and tricks, you can like my Facebook page and follow me on Twitter. Links are in the description box below. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.